right. Hello, hello, hello. Hope everyone is doing well today. Um, so you know, had a pretty good day myself. Just kind of, you know, just thinking about the stuff, and I guess I guess I can jump right in. I was thinking about three things, and I just want to talk about them. Whatever. Right. First thing is, I'm wondering how, you know, how, I'm wondering like what, what I don't know if anyone watching this has ever wondered like what you're supposed to do in life, right? I mean, we talk about things like maybe like a social mission or something like this. And I suppose, I think the first part of your life you have, you react to things, and maybe we talked about yesterday about sort of like reactivity and doing things like that. But but there is sort of this idea that you sort of want to be unencumbered. We talk about, it's interesting because I don't know if you remember like the movie like The Rocketeer. I just was thinking about that. I don't know, I can't remember the movie. I remember having watched it when I was younger because it's a pretty old movie. It's older than Good Will Hunting, right? But anyway, but so we talk about The Rocketeer, and the movie basically is about an adventurer who has like a rocket strapped to his back, right? He can fly, right? And I think if you ask a lot of people, right? So this is where a lot of people probably are just like me, how it's sort of like, oh, what's your like, what superpower do you want to have, right? And people say, oh, I want to be able to fly, right? And it's interesting because there's obviously the sensational aspect of flight that is sort of you know just very desirable, obviously. But I think I do think that even for the most people, right, the idea of flying is really about freedom, right? And it's about sort of the ability to sort of transcend, right? I think that one of the things that that I think for me personally, right, is I have to be able to to break the chains, right, to quote to quote songs, to quote everything, right. And I suppose I think that I do believe that this is probably an innate desire for everyone. I don't know though. I mean, I one of the things that I'm always curious about is not to think everybody's like you, but also not to think that everybody's not like you, right? And and finding the balance, finding that truth is very interesting. And it's just so interesting because I think that I do wonder sort of what I am supposed to do. Some people, I think we talked about how there's just this idea of like people wishing they were never born. And it's sort of like, oh, well, maybe society will say to someone like me, I wish you were never born, right? Or, you are not organized enough, therefore you should die. Or like, people like you can't be organized enough, fundamentally, so therefore people should. You may think, I mean, to me, this idea of genocide, we talk about just similar stuff, and it on an emotional level, right, it does get to you. And I have to be completely honest, right. And I wonder, and I have to, I would imagine that if someone like me, maybe because I am able to express my emotions, like you do feel all alone. And I'm wondering if anyone else has this idea that well, there's in other words, like some species die out through evolution, right? If you believe in evolution, the sort of process of evolution. But there is this scientists want to sort of preserve certain species, right? So there is this idea that oh, the white rhino, right, it's gonna die. But at the same time, we want to preserve it, and we really want to preserve it because to the extent that we can control. I've always thought about it this way, like we talk about naturalness. Well, part of naturalness is our ability to think and control our environment, right? So it does, the sort of natural artificial distinction kind of kind of intermeshes together, right? Like we if we have evolved naturally, then we've evolved the ability to now control our environment, and that's part of the idea. Now you might say, well, if there's a God that created us, then he also allowed us the ability to control it, in which case at an artificial level we ought to sort of care and have sympathy and all that kind of stuff, right? But we talk about sort of the white rhino, and we talk about how there's this conservatorship, right? Like we want to preserve, and we want to preserve for the purpose of sort of this idea of life is valuable innately, no matter if you're not organized or not, right? And I just wonder, I suppose that I must say, like, that's my view. I don't like to push my views upon others, but I suppose I ought to start, right? It's one of those things, because I guess I take it as a given that most people would think like that, and then when they don't think like that, it's very hurtful, because it's very hurtful if you could say, oh, you're shunned from society, because you're unorganized, or you have something wrong with you, et cetera, et cetera. To me, like, I'm very much somebody who would argue that, from whatever perspective you take, whether you're an introvert who somehow wants to control others, or an extrovert who is all about freedom. I suppose both introverts and extroverts should want to have freedom on some level. Maybe the introvert even more so, right? But the point is that no matter who you are, right? Like, I believe that you ought to have certain rights, right? Certain individual rights, and including, but not limited to, the ability to reproduce. And I guess, that's just obviously a response to something, right? They were talking about how, we would live in a society that would control reproduction rights on some level. And, for the purpose is, I suppose, to evolve society. So necessarily taking that naturalistic perspective that we have to evolve, right? Evolve into higher beings. And, like I said, I'm all for evolution, and I'm all for the idea that, the strongest people ought to be, reproducing for sure. But I also think that, I also think that that doesn't mean that the reproductive rights of those ought to be artificially constrained, right? Like, if I can't get a girl, right? Like, if I can't get, somebody to reproduce with me, then that's my bad, right? Like, I would say that that's for sure. But if it were the case that I can't get a girl to reproduce with me because of some artificial constraint, right, then I think it becomes an issue, right? And I think that's where I think that sort of artificial versus natural divide kind of is broken into, right? But like I said, I mean, for me, it's a very interesting idea, and I think that I just can't imagine why, like I said, like, it's like, oh, let's preserve life for life because life has value, and I think we need to appreciate that. So that's my view. That's I guess my moralizing. Maybe I should start moralizing here. I don't know. I don't really like to, and that's one thing about me, because I feel like it's not my place to tell other people how to think or sort of what to do. I think that, but I suppose that to the extent that other people are influencing, in other words, like, if we saw some supervillain who's trying to control others' minds by putting forth a message that, is antithetical to what we might believe is good or just, and then I think it becomes somebody's responsibility to sort of oppose that with their own message. And so I don't know. I'm all for peace moreover, but I'm all for peace. I'm all for peace over strife. What I was trying to say. Let's try to be clear. We're going to start to be more clear, more polished. Try to be. I suppose it's like that's my responsibility as well, right? It's interesting, but yeah, so that's about it. I just think that I don't know. I'm trying to understand the viewpoints of everyone to try to see exactly what are the sort of natural / artificial constraints and react to those accordingly. But like I said, to me, I think we ought to appreciate all life, and I appreciate whoever views this video. Probably myself, but that's about it. Yeah. So yeah, have a good rest of your